and welcome to Business Incorporated, the first edition for, we're looking at that for the week, live from Channels Television in Lagos. I am Bolaji Akinwale. Coming up, the Central Bank of Nigeria speaks about the state of Nigerian banks. A German Chancellor, Angela Merkel, declined comments on UK exiting the EU this year, plus updates from the local fixed income markets. Okay, let's begin. Nigerian Central Bank is expected to hold a press briefing on the state of the Nigerian banking industry today. Unconfirmed reports say that the management of Skybank will be taken over by the regulatory authorities in the banking sector. It is expected that officials of the Apex Bank will make comments on the states of Nigerian banks in general. We'll bring you updates from that meeting as it unfolds. And German Chancellor Merkel declines to comment on British Conservative politician Theresa May's remarks not to officially apply to leave the EU before the end of the year. The UK has been under pressure to exit the European Union following a vote to leave the bloc weeks ago.
German Chancellor Angela Merkel declined to comment on Thursday on remarks by British Interior Minister Theresa May that exit talks between Britain and the EU would not start until the end of the year.
For now, this is about elections within the Tory party. So let's wait for the result to see how a new government will act. We can then evaluate the situation. In any case, I'm of course following events, just like many other people, but I would not like to comment politically.
Merkel said this when asked about May's comments, adding that one should wait until the British Conservatives decided on their next leader. May, who is seen by bookmakers as the favourite to replace Prime Minister David Cameron, said earlier on Thursday that no decision should be made on whether to invoke Article 50, that's the formal process of leaving the EU, until Britain had a clear negotiating strategy. Speaking to reporters in Berlin, Merkel also said the German parliament would be asked to vote on an EU-Canada trade deal, appearing to contradict the European Commission's plans for simple approval procedure.
Trotzdem handelt es sich hier ein It's, however, a highly political agreement which will be widely discussed. The rights of the German parliament, as we've agreed on them, for our national decisions, of course, allow for the German government to include parliament in the process.
During the same news conference, Merkel added that the Bundestag lower house of parliament will have a say before the government would decide on any ratification of the agreement. The European Commission will, on the 5th of July, propose that the Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement would be an EU-only agreement. This would mean it would be adopted if backed by representatives of member states and by the European Parliament.
And still on Brexit, thousands of people take to the street of London in protest against the results of the referendum in which many voted to leave the European Union. The result of the votes, which saw the Leave camp winning, has thrown the UK leadership into some form of crisis.
Thousands of demonstrators gathered in central London on Saturday to march in protest against last week's vote to leave the European Union. The referendum result has plunged Britain into political chaos and was rejected by most people in the capital. Most protesters were young adults and many were draped in EU flags, while others waved banners proclaiming slogans like "I'm with EU" or simply "We Brexit." London voted 60% in favour of remaining in the EU in the June 23rd referendum, with younger voters widely in favour of staying in the bloc. But 52% of Britons overall cast ballots in favour of leaving. The vote to leave has prompted a battle within the ruling Conservative Party to succeed Prime Minister David Cameron, who has said he would resign after the result. The main opposition Labour Party has also turned on itself, with most of its lawmakers in Parliament having voted to withdraw support for party leader Jeremy Corbyn.
And now to the markets. It's been a choppy session across Europe as investors took a step back to make some profits. Now, this comes after a strong rally last week following the fallout from the UK's referendum results. Now, let's see how the markets look like at this time. Conrad Busen, DWTV Channels TV correspondent, joins me from the Frankfurt Stock Exchange. Conrad, welcome to the program. Now, stepping into the July markets, give us some top headlines and events to look forward to in the new month.
Well, first off, Bulaji, let me remind us, viewers, that the month of July is also the first month of the third quarter, so we'll be getting a lot of earnings reports about the second quarter from many companies. As usually, the earnings season will kick off in the United States a bit earlier than here in Europe. Large corporations like PepsiCo, for example, will already come out with their earnings this week, while the large German corporations, for example, will wait until the third week of the month until they come out with their earnings. In terms of economic data, we have a hot piece of news out as early as this week. Towards the end of the week, we'll be getting an update from the United States labor market. The latest unemployment rate will come out, the rate for the month of June, and this, of course, is a very important piece of data for the monetary policy makers in the United States. Which brings me to the central banks. Most and many large monetary policy institutions, central banks, will have monetary policy meetings this month. The most important ones will probably be the meeting of the Bank of England's Monetary Policy Committee next week on July 14th, where they will consider whether or not to lower interest rates as early as next week, while the Federal Reserve will, at its meeting on July 26th and 27th, consider whether it continues to increase interest rates in the United States.
Now, Conrad, tell us about the new trading week starting today in particular. Any early bets as far as Q2 earnings are concerned?
Well, early birds in order for what we can expect. Yes, we did get the latest numbers from the German auto market, the sales numbers for the first 6 months of this year, and let me tell you, those have been very strong months. More than 1.7 million new cars here in Germany got a registration plate during the months between January and June, and more than 800,000 of those cars were with the diesel technology. So it looks like the German car makers managed to sell many more cars, a record amount, by the way, of this diesel technology here in Germany, despite all the bad-mouthing of diesel after the emissions scandal at Volkswagen.
And just before I let you go, still talking on Brexit votes and the likelihood that London would lose its prime financial centre position. How are the European capitals of Paris and Frankfurt jostling for this position, and what are their attractions?
Well, of course, both cities, Paris and Frankfurt, have in common that they are within the euro area and within the European Union. So that's not really a point where they can compete about. Frankfurt is a bit more in the middle of everything here in Europe. You know, we've got the Eastern European EU members closer. Also, Switzerland is closer, which is one reason why the large Swiss bank UBS thinks about placing its new European asset management here in Frankfurt. Frankfurt has a lot of infrastructure that's only waiting to be used. During the last decade, lots of new offices were built here in Frankfurt, and many of those offices are still empty. We have also, for example, the largest European internet hub here in Frankfurt. Rents and property prices are quite lower than Paris. Now, listening to myself, I realized that I might be a bit biased towards Frankfurt, so let me quickly give you a couple of advantages that Paris has: the Eiffel Tower, better food, and Euro Disney. So I guess that both cities really have a lot to offer to financial people that want to come to the continent.
Thank you so much, Conrad. Thank you so much for your time. We do appreciate it.